Was Groucho Marx a pipe smoker? I'd like to talk about that while enjoying a pipe. Howdy, y'all. Virginia Piper here. Groucho Marx was an icon in his day. He, along with the other Marx brothers, produced a lot of films filled with sight gags and one-liners. I used to love to watch them when I was a kid. And the wordplay was awesome in Groucho's jokes. In the movie Animal Crackers, while playing the part of Captain Spaulding, Groucho boasted about shooting an elephant in his pajamas, and then added, "How the elephant got into my pajamas, I'll never know." Recently, fellow pipe smoker James Hill posted this on Twitter. Outside of a dog, a book is man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. I love jokes like this. I tell jokes like this. And they were a huge part of a game show he hosted called You Bet Your Life, which incidentally launched the career of comedian Phyllis Diller. Groucho was almost always seen with a cigar. The truth is, in real life, he usually smoked them only twice a day. That and the mustache painted on his upper lip were part of an act that made him a comedy legend. But what about his pipe smoking? Well, for that, we'll have to turn to an article written in Cigar Aficionado magazine by his son Arthur Marx in 1993. In the article, Arthur described his exposure to tobacco growing up with Groucho. The younger Marx told a story of his foray into pipe smoking, and it gives us some insight into his father's enjoyment of the briar. Here's what he wrote. It was Groucho who introduced me to tobacco. When I dropped out of USC my freshman year in 1941, I decided to spend my time writing instead of taking required courses like botany and physics, which I had no interest in or talent for. Since every writer I knew smoked a pipe, I thought it might help my prose to have a pipe in my mouth while I was pounding on my Remington. Without telling my father, I purchased a cheap corncob pipe at a tobacco store in Beverly Hills and stuck it in my mouth, hoping for inspiration. It didn't have any tobacco in it. I just sucked the stem to give the effect I was smoking. One morning, Groucho walked in unexpectedly and surprised me with the pipe in my mouth. And who do you think you are with that cheap corncob pipe in your kisser? General MacArthur? He exclaimed. I'll give you a real pipe. And with that, he went straight back to his bedroom and returned a few moments later carrying a straight grain Dunhill, one that cost about $75, and dropped it on my desk. Try this one on for size, he said. Just don't smoke until you're finished with your tennis career. At that time, I was the 5th-ranked 18-year-old tennis player in the United States. So one morning, when I thought Father was out walking the dog, I filled the bowl of my prized Dunhill with Dream Castle pipe tobacco that I had bought at the same store that sold me the corncob. And after several false starts, fired it up with a kitchen match. I was just getting the knack of keeping a pipe lit when I heard Father's footsteps coming down the hall towards my open bedroom door. Knowing he disapproved, I quickly stashed the lighted pipe in the bottom drawer of my desk and closed it. But there was no way I could rid the room of the cloud of acrid smoke hanging over my chair, or the smell of cheap tobacco. As Groucho entered, he took one whiff of the smoke, stopped in his tracks, and stared at me under raised eyebrows. But instead of bawling me out, he wheeled around and strode back down the hall to his bedroom. When he returned a couple of minutes later, I expected him to be carrying a bullwhip. Instead, he had a handful of pipes, a can of Dunhill tobacco, and a box of Dunhill 410s. He spread all his tobacco paraphernalia out on the desk in front of me and said, "If you're going to smoke, smoke some decent tobacco. That stuff you're smoking smells like horse manure." "You mean you want me to smoke?" I asked. "I don't want you to, but if you're old enough to join the army, you're old enough to do what you want." "You mean that?" "Hell yes, I was smoking when I was only 15, and I had the clap when I was 16. But if you insist on smoking, promise me one thing, that you do it in moderation. As long as you don't smoke too much and stay away from cigarettes, it'll never hurt you." To show me he meant it, 3 years later, after we were in the war with Japan, and I, as a member of the U.S. Coast Guard, was stationed on a remote island in the South Pacific, Groucho placed a standing order with Dunhill to ship me 50 of its 410s once a month. Of course, my boxes of Dunhill cigars didn't always arrive intact. Not after the fleet postmaster, who apparently was a cigar aficionado himself, discovered what was in those mysterious aromatic packages from Dunhill addressed to Yeoman First Class Arthur Marx. Was Groucho a pipe smoker? You bet your life. Have a great one, y'all.